Raider Nation, what's good? Jesse Merrick here. Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Black Sports Network podcast. We have finally got a game to talk about because the Raiders kicked off the preseason up in Seattle tonight. We're done with practice, at least for this episode, and we'll be diving into our takeaways from their first game action. Obviously, we'll be talking about the starters and what they did show in that limited action. Then there's the defense. Yeah, they struggled. It was not great, especially in the first half. And last but not least, we dive into a couple of guys who put some good tape out there in their first preseason action. Now, let's start, as I said, with the starters and that one drive we saw out of that group. It was a promising start with the comeback right out of the gates to Trey, and then the 3-yard rush by Genty as well, when it looked like there wasn't a whole lot of meat on the bone on that run either. But then things came to a screeching halt. The drops by Dante Thornton and Jacoby ended the drive. Now, with Dante, probably a little bit of jitters in his first game as a pro. For Jacoby, that guy doesn't drop passes. He had, like one last year, if I remember right? So don't worry too much about those things. The one thing that did kind of suck for everybody, us in the media, fans of football in general, and Raider Nation as well. I know you guys wanted to see more of Genty. He only got 3 carries and -1 yards. He didn't have a lot of opportunities, obviously, hence the 3 carries. But also, when he did get the rock, guys were kind of in his lap pretty quickly. So, I guess just hold out and wait and hope that maybe we see more in that game against the Niners. And also make sure you're tuning in to us because we'll tell you what we're seeing out of him at practice, especially on Thursday when they hit it for joint practices against the Niners. Those are always fun. He's going to get a lot of work. Now, we did tell you guys throughout this podcast, in the newsletter, everything, that you guys were going to see a lot of 12 personnel. And that was the thing early. The tight ends were involved a lot, really at every unit as each different group came in. So keep that in mind. Chip loves those tight ends, loves getting them involved, and we're obviously going to see a lot of them throughout the preseason and the season as a whole as well. I've talked about it before. I think we're going to see plenty of 3 tight end sets with Ian Thomas. We saw him pop a bit in the game as well. He was split out wide at multiple different spots. So another really interesting piece for this team, and a guy who's a vet in the league as well. So they've got a really deep tight end group, and you saw some of the younger guys getting some burn as well. So lots of interesting pieces to work with in that group, and I'm sure a couple of them will be stashed on the practice squad as well. Now we do have to talk about the defense. Reluctantly, it was not good. The tackling was really, really bad. Gino even alluded to it, that guys needed to kind of get used to not only being tackled, but tackling again. It is the first game of the preseason. So again, let's not all freak out here. It's August 7th? Give them some time, not the start you want, and they would all admit that. But I think, too, you got to realize that at practice, it's been a very player-friendly practice in terms of, they've been doing a lot of pop practices, pop periods, where they're not taking guys to the ground. And I think that's smart. You want to take care of your team. You don't want these guys beat up going to the season. But I think we are going to see many more, tackling drills, maybe not drills, but just more periods where maybe they're doing more wrap-up tackling rather than just those pop periods. It's very clear that needs to be improved upon. At the end of the day, too, though, keep in mind these guys are pros. I know we've seen the Raiders defense struggle with tackling in the past, but I would imagine with this staff and with Pete and all of them, that's not going to be a major issue going forward. But I would be shocked if we don't see more of an emphasis placed on tackling, form fitting, all those different things this week throughout practice. And again, we're going to see more of that in that joint practice against the 49ers. So if that's something that doesn't change, maybe in the second preseason game, start to wonder hey, what the heck's going on here? But also, again, do keep in mind that it is the preseason. It's kind of hard to flip the switch sometimes for that, even especially when you're going to get a drive or two. One of the things Pete really didn't like was the penalties. We saw 5 of them in the first half alone, and that really messed things up for both sides of the ball. Obviously, the defense can't get into a rhythm, can't get off the field, and then offensively, they can't get into a rhythm because they're not getting the pass or the opportunities and the possessions and the plays to be able to do it. So the defense needed to get off the field, and a big reason why they couldn't do that is because they just couldn't stop the run. George Holani rushed for 61 yards in the first quarter alone. He was averaging 8.7 yards per carry. That is no bueno. You cannot let that happen against any team, especially when you're sitting in that 4-3 base, which we'll get to that a bit here in a second. But I was expecting to see a much better job from this team about stopping the run. Obviously, it's the preseason. You're going to see very vanilla looks. So you would think you'd see more of that, but you didn't really get a chance to see these guys step up and run defense, and that is something that's first chance to really hit somebody else. you did want to see more physicality out of them. One thing that really struck me was how many guys they rotated in early along the defensive line, specifically at 3 technique. We saw Jonah Laulu and Tyree Wilson. That's nothing new. We've seen those guys get a lot of work, and we've seen those guys trade a lot of reps. The thing that surprised me was J.J. Pegues getting in there as early as he did. I think if I remember right, he was out there on the first drive, if not the first drive, very quickly in the second drive. A young dude who's very athletic, can move around the line. We just haven't seen a ton of him at camp, or at least he hasn't popped to me. And when I saw him out there with a bunch of the starters, I was like, whoa, that kind of caught my eye. So keep an eye on his usage going forward. Obviously, there's a new face along that defensive line that we will definitely be talking about in just a few minutes here. But J.J. Pegues, I was surprised to see him in there that early with that group, and I thought he looked pretty well. He was trying to do what he could do, and got an opportunity and took advantage of it, I thought. Isaiah Pola-Mao, he bailed him out with that pick on the first drive. It was nice to see him keep making plays in the preseason. Preseasons have been big for him. Obviously, he got a lot of time last year, once he stepped into that starting role. So you'd like to see him kind of build off of that. Again, for him too, the tackling needs to be better. But nice job making a play. This is a defense that struggled to turn the ball over a lot, in recent years, specifically last year. So getting a pick early on, that's a big win, especially for a starter and a guy stepping into that full-time starting role for the first time. So hopefully they can build off of that. I mentioned the 4-3 base. I don't think we're going to see that look a whole lot. Again, it's the preseason. Things are going to be very vanilla. They're not going to show a ton of things. So they did sit in that 4-3 base with Devin White, Landon Roberts, and Jermaine Pratt playing linebacker there. Again, probably not going to see a ton of those looks, but it was disconcerting to me that when you're sitting in that 4-3 base with 3 real linebackers in there, you're struggling to stop the run. One of the things that was an issue was setting the edge. Many times we saw guys, whether it was the corners, whether it was linebackers, whether it was Jeremy Chin on one of the plays, getting beat around the edge there. I think setting the edge is going to be another thing that the coaching staff really hammers home with this group, is winning that battle to set the edge, and then also the tackling, the form fitting, all that stuff going forward. Now as we kind of move along and shuffle into some of the twos, we obviously have to talk about Aidan. He comes in, he throws 2 picks. It wasn't great. Twitter loses their mind. I saw plenty of people saying he's not an NFL quarterback and all these different things. Pump the brakes on that. This guy has played very well throughout practice and camp and looked very comfortable. And I know it's different when you got other people and real live bullets flying at you, but not a great first half from him. I thought that he turned it around and played much better in the second half. But that first one, he really kind of looked like he was ready to uncork it and just underthrew it in a big way to Dante Thornton. That was just kind of wild. That's obviously the guy you got to put a ton of air onto the ball for. And clearly that didn't happen. That was just an ugly, ugly throw. Aidan would admit it. All those things. The second one, the pick by Nehemiah Pritchett. Look, another bad play. He was just staring Bachman down the entire time. There were some people out there that I saw where they were like, Mike McDonald is out there scheming and, dirty work to out there to go and start scheming and disguising coverages and stuff like that. I could be wrong. I am not a defensive guru. I know a bit about football, having played and all those things. To me, without looking at the all 22 and all those things, it looked like they were just sitting in a cover 3, and it looked like Pritchett was reading Aidan's eyes, and Aidan was just staring right at Bachman. And so as he's letting that clear out go by past him, he knows he's got safety help over the top. So he bails on that. It's like, let me go make a play. And that's exactly what he did, He saw his guy was beat that was covering Bachman on that out. He jumps in front of it and comes down with a pick. I think it was that simple. I don't think Mike McDonald was disguising on that particular play. I didn't see a ton of disguising or a ton of defense. It was like, whoa, what are they doing? But they were bringing the heat, from time to time. But yeah, I just I didn't think that was the case. I saw that, and I watched the play over a couple of times. Again, could be wrong, but I think it was just a simple cover 3 or quarters look. And, he just made a good play. But again, bad ball. Aidan should not have thrown it there. He stared him down the entire time. I think the read that he was looking at was that linebacker or possibly a nickel there who kind of took a step forward. Go back and watch the play too, guys, so you can get your take on this one. But looked like he stepped forward and Aidan saw he was out of position. I think he just threw the ball a little too late. And again, staring him down the entire time, you give the defender a chance to make a play like Pritchett did. But like I noted, I thought that he played better in the second half, and came back, looked much better, kept the team in it, and you like to see the response from that. As I said, a lot of people freaking out, saying Aidan, shouldn't be the backup quarterback. And we know Cam Miller played well. We'll get to that in a few. But I think maybe pump the brakes on the hate on Aidan. He has had a really good camp. A lot of us have been impressed with what we've seen from him. Chalk it up to one game, early preseason, first time out there against other people, all that different stuff. Coming out and playing better in the second half like he did, I think that's a big plus for him going forward. So I wouldn't overreact too much about what we saw in the first half from Aidan. Again, some bad throws. You'll go back, look at the tape, and they'll correct those things. On the offensive line, some interesting things. Look, we didn't expect to see a ton of the starters out there for a very long time. They pulled Colton Miller, DJ Glaze, and Dylan Parham very quickly. I thought that was interesting because they left Jordan Meredith and Jackson Powers-Johnson in there a ton. Now, obviously, the interior of this offensive line needs a lot of work, but I thought it was strange that we saw Parham pulled so quickly. That to me tells me that the staff is obviously very comfortable with Colton. Otherwise, they wouldn't have extended him. They're obviously very comfortable with DJ Glaze. Otherwise, they wouldn't have pulled him out of there that quickly. And then Dylan Parham, to me, it seems like he's a lock. They like the guy. He's played pretty well, too. I haven't seen any major glaring issues out of him. So they get rid of him very quickly and leave Jordan Meredith and Jackson Powers-Johnson in there for a very long time. For Jordan Meredith, totally get it. He's playing center, getting comfortable with the position. You want to get him that work. Jackson Powers-Johnson, it's a little confusing to me because, again, we've talked about it. The curious case of the way that they're kind of treating him or the battle there. I thought it was strange to keep him in here that long. I thought for sure that maybe we would see him play like a quarter, but they were even out there, if I remember right, into the third quarter. That was kind of strange to me. Again, I get it, why you have Meredith in there for so long, because it's a not brand new because he played some in college and stuff, but it's a new deal for him with this team, working with Gino, and obviously Gino got pulled out of there pretty quickly, but then working with Aidan as well going forward. So surprising to see the two of them. Maybe the staff just wants to see more continuity between those two guys and let Jackson get comfortable playing guard again because he thought he was going to be a center. That could very much well be the case. I think it is worth noting too that even though Jackson, was predominantly playing guard, last year before they got rid of Andre James and kind of slotted him there as their center. I think mentally getting comfortable with playing that position again and comfortable with the center as well. The communication between those two is probably going to be really big. So maybe that's what it was. I'm going to be curious to see, again, how the usage of Jackson Powers-Johnson goes going forward. Alex Kappa, as I noted, didn't practice the last time we saw them on, I believe that was Tuesday. He didn't play in the game today either from what I saw, but I'm sure it's a veteran thing. We'll have to kind of see, maybe nothing super serious. If he's not out there come Saturday, obviously we'll be asking to see if it's something that, the Raiders are worried about, his availability going forward. But keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the usage of Jackson Powers-Johnson and the way that maybe he's continued to be rotated with Alex Kappa going forward. But it just stuck out to me how long the two of them were out there together. Overall, with the offensive line, just needed to see better run blocking. That's no surprise. I was surprised, though, to see that they did top the 100-yard mark on the day. I think we got to give a big shout-out to Chris Collier and Dylan Lobby, who we're going to get more to on him later. But those two guys, were able to get them over the hump. But I didn't think this was going to be a team, when I went back and looked at the stats, that topped that 100-yard mark. That was definitely surprising to me. Now, let's stick with the second wave of guys and go back to the defense. Thomas Bennett the fourth. We have to talk about him. On the stat sheet, it's not going to jump off to you. He finishes with 1 tackle, but I thought that he made his presence felt. I was really impressed with what he went out there and did. And obviously on the defensive line, it's not like, especially in the preseason, they're going to be throwing all these crazy stunts and all these insane things. They're just going to say, hey, line up, go get the quarterback. I thought he did a good job of doing that. Fresh off the bus, fresh off the plane, whatever you want to say. He comes in there and apparently he told the coaching staff, I want to play. I want to show you guys what I can do. I want to get my feet wet. I did not think we were going to see him in the preseason game. I thought for sure we would see him back out of practice as they got going this week, get his feet wet, get comfortable, all those things. He is a very interesting piece. I talked about it multiple times in the YouTube short that I posted and also the longer form podcast where we broke down the trade. Still don't love getting rid of a guy who I think is very talented in Jacorian Bennett at corner. Having said that, the piece that they got is very interesting. Thomas Bennett it comes in and is instantly going to be involved in that group. He played on a team that has a very, very deep defensive line. He was able to work his way up from the practice squad all the way up to getting reps with the twos. I think the sky could be the limit for him with this group. There's obviously a ton of opportunity. They're obviously rotating a ton of guys in there, as I noted, Jonah Laulu, JJ Pegues, Tyree Wilson, who's moving around all over the offense or defensive line. I think that Bennett's going to come in and can move around all over the place, and he's a big dude, obviously very athletic. You could see the brick house like build that he's got. So that's going to be a guy that's going to be real interesting to watch next week when they get back out there at practice. Jamal Adams also speaking about the twos. Well, look, this guy goes back to Seattle. Obviously a big moment for him. A lot of us all talked about Pete and Geno going back, but we can't forget about Jamal too. I know he didn't have the greatest years of his career there in Seattle, but, stoked and a cool moment for him to be able to go back there and see that. You could see pregame, he was hyped for it. Even during the game as well, when all the threes were in there, he's like locked in, cheering, going for it. I love seeing the vets still involved, late in the game. Especially in the preseason, so that stuff is nice to see. But he finishes with 3 tackles. He showed that quickness and speed off the edge that we have all talked about. His usage and his development is going to be fun to watch going forward because he is an interesting piece with this. Now, let's get to what some of the threes showed us. And these are going to be mostly offensively. Defensively, it was a bit of a struggle all around. And some of the guys that I thought were going to pop didn't necessarily. I thought JT Woods, I thought we'd see more from him. Didn't quite get that, so we'll have to see. Maybe on second look of the footage, some more things will reveal themselves. But offensively, I was really impressed with Dylan Lobby. I know a lot of you guys on Twitter actually saw him as well, and he stood out. He goes for 5 carries and 34 yards, had 1 catch for a 6-yard touchdown, and then he followed it up with a nice tackle on kickoff to pin Seattle deep. I saw some people saying, is the CMC storyline back, that he's going to be CMC light, all those things. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him to make this roster, but you love to see this guy actually get out there and, show out in the first game. He really was a good motor for them in the second half, and I think that's big for a guy like him. I think he does end up making it onto the practice squad. I don't think he's going to, land on another roster or anything like that. But hey, if he keeps doing this in the games, somebody else might take notice, and he does have an interesting skill set. And the fact that he's out there, grinding, doing that on special teams right after he just scores the touchdown, like, big ups to him on that. That was cool to see, and he's a fun guy to watch, and he's got a lot of energy and some juice to him. Then we saw Cam Miller. This is the guy that stole the show. Right away, that 41-yard bomb to Shedrick Jackson on the double move. Really impressive throw. Great job by Shedrick Jackson on the route as well, to do it. Those double moves aren't always easy. He got the corner to bite, comes down with a catch, and Shedrick actually had a really nice game. 4 catches for 76 yards. He led the way for receiving on the team as well on the day. You have a big 41 bomb like that when guys are rotating in, that's probably going to happen, but was impressed with him and the work that he and Cam Miller were able to do. But as far as Cam goes, look, goes and finishes 6 for 7. The only completion was that throwaway late in the game when they're trying to get in there to where they can kick the field goal with Carlson to possibly win it. Obviously, that didn't happen. They go on and they missed the field goal because it got blocked again. There was, I think, 2 blocks on the night. You'd like to see him clean that stuff up again. It's the first game of the preseason. Everybody stay tuned, see what we see out of this group next week and in the game against the 49ers. But I think everybody does need to calm down about the whole talk of him being QB2 and unseating Aidan and all those things. A solid night from him, a good job against a lot of guys who probably won't make an NFL roster. And I'm not trying to minimize what Cam did. I'm just trying to really power home the point that Aidan has had a really good camp, and Aidan is very clearly locked in as the number 2 quarterback for this team. Cam Miller is a really good and a really interesting project for this team. The more work that he's gotten, the more comfortable he's looked. Tonight we did see that out of them. But I just think it's one of those things where it's like, everybody be patient. Don't lose your minds. Let him develop. Let him take his time. Let Aidan be the number 2 guy because he is an NFL quarterback that can be a solid backup for your team. He's not going to be the starter. God willing, if something happens to Geno, yeah, he'll get thrown in there. But I don't think it's this overreaction where people are like, you need to cut Aidan, and he's terrible, and all these things. Like, calm down. It was one half of bad football with 2 bad throws. Everyone's losing their mind over that. But Cam Miller did play well. What better way to burst onto the scene than with that double move? And like I said, the more work this guy gets, the more comfortable he gets. He talked about how he's a rhythm player. I thought he got into a rhythm tonight in this game. And so I'm real curious to see what he does with more time. I thought we were going to see him a lot more. I think the coaching staff probably wanted to let Aidan get out of that funk, and he did. Again, in the second half, he responded. So I'm curious to see what we see out of Cam in the preseason game number 2 against the 49ers, because I would imagine he's going to get the entire second half. I would hope so. I want to see this kid get a lot of work and really be able to develop that rhythm. But overall, guys, just not a great showing for the Raiders in the opening preseason game. More specifically, the top 2 units in the first half. But the thing that we have to power home is that it is the preseason, and it's August 7th, and it is the first preseason game. So just realize that things are going to happen. You should be okay with a bad showing in the very first preseason game. I get that it's been a long time since we've seen them out on the field playing real football. But again, it's the first time. It's August 7th. They won't play for exactly a month from now. So there's still a ton of time to clean this stuff up. And I think it's good to be exposed a bit, to be like, okay, these are the things we need to work on. Pete is very clearly going to power home the tackling, setting the edge, and stopping the run, and also not committing as many penalties. And I know those are all things that have plagued this defense over the years, no matter who the coach has been. But Pete and his staff are very clearly going to hammer those things home this week. He wasn't happy about it at the half when he talked about it, and he definitely wasn't happy about it after the game as well. So stay tuned on that front. And also do keep in mind that offensively, even though things didn't look amazing, they're not using a lot of motion. They're not doing all those things. They're keeping it so vanilla. Chip is also a paranoid guy in the sense of not wanting to give things away, and I don't blame him. He's a creative offensive mind. Let him be vanilla. Let them struggle on offense in the preseason. I said it when we were talking to Jason on the podcast not too long ago. I think fans should be rooting for the Raiders to go 0-3 in the postseason. A lot of the times when teams don't do too hot in the preseason, they come around and look pretty good in the regular season. So we'll see what happens with them. I think it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be a little bit of an up and down performances, but then as we inch closer, these guys are going to lock in more. We're going to see a better performance out of them, and I'm real curious to see what this group looks like come, September 7th? Yes, September 7th in New England against the Patriots. That'll be a much different group than we saw this time around. I learned a long time ago when I was an intern in Los Angeles. It was UCLA football. I was at their preseason, not not called preseason, in their spring ball practice, their very first spring ball practice when Jim Mora was the head coach. And I remember sitting back thinking man, these guys are going to suck. There's a lot of missed tackles, balls were going everywhere, all this stuff. That team went on to have a really successful season, made it to a quality bowl game. I forget what the record actually was, but they won some games. I believe they beat SC. That was a down couple of years for SC as well. But at that point, I sat back and learned and remembered, okay, these things take time, especially when you got a new coach, new quarterback, new GM, even plucking all these pieces and everything like that. A new coordinator now back in the NFL on offense for the first time in a while. There's just a lot of newness to this team. So everybody kind of take a deep breath, digest it. They all know it was bad. They're going to go back to work and break down this film and go through it all with a fine-tooth comb and have a lot to a lot to correct, going into it. I think that's a good thing. You want lots of things to correct in week 1 of the preseason because you don't want it to look perfect then. If it did, you'd probably be like, wait, something's wrong here. So just realize that there's a lot for them to work on, and from there they can start to build off of things from that. And as they move into next week, we will be diving into the growth that we see out of them, in our newsletter and in the podcast as well. So with that in mind, if you guys are not subscribed to our newsletter, head to silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and please do subscribe to get that delivered right to your inbox every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning by 6 a.m. We'll dive deeper into the game on Friday's newsletter as well, and make sure you like and subscribe this podcast wherever it is that you guys are listening to us. And if you liked what you heard, please hit us with a 5-star review and leave a comment as well. I'm fired up to be talking about a game. I can't wait. Next week, we've got those, joint practice, or we have the singular one joint practice on Thursday. I can't wait to be talking about that. That's going to be more fun. And as we just inch closer and closer, man, we're getting closer to real football. We just booked everything to go to the first 2 road games, the game in New England and the game in Washington as well. So it got me pumped up, got me excited. As I said, I'm not going to be traveling for the preseason. I don't quite think the juice is worth the squeeze. You saw the outing they had tonight. I'm glad I didn't spend the money to go up there. But when it gets for real, when the season is for real, we will be on the road with through at least the first chunk of the season. We'll see how things go from there in terms of the growth of the channel and all that stuff. But just want to be transparent with you guys about why I'm not up there on the road. Our guy Arnie, which need to give him a shout out in this one as well. Arnie Bazemore, you guys have seen his work in our newsletter. Amazing photographer. He did a great job, covering that game for us, sending us some awesome videos as well. I'll be throwing this in the newsletter, but Marshawn Lynch is apparently a photographer now. The guy does it all. I thought that was pretty cool. Arnie got some great video of that. But shout out to Arnie, one of the great guys on our team, and so thankful to have him on board helping us out. He does awesome work. But like I said, pretty soon here, I'll be on the road as well, and we'll be talking about real football in a month. In the meantime, let's see how the growth is and how much this team does improve after what was a lackluster performance. So we'll see how all that goes for them going forward. But with that, guys, we do appreciate you watching and listening, however you're taking us in, and we will catch you after Saturday's practice. That should be the next one for the Raiders. So we'll catch you then.